Hello, my name is Allie Pash. Welcome to my YouTube channel, and today is the start of week 2 of the Three Rivers Pantry challenge. So let's just hop right into cooking for the week. So we're starting this week off with making some bone broth. So in past weeks, I've showed you that I like to save my vegetable scraps as well as chicken bones and things like that would make a good stock. So now we're actually putting it into good use. I have 2 gallon bags and then 1 quart-sized bag, and I'm filling up my 40-quart stock pot about halfway full. I do think I end up adding a bit more water. I also like to add apple cider vinegar to help draw the minerals out of the vegetables and the bones, and that's going to boil for probably a couple of hours, 4 or 5, maybe 6 hours. And then I'm pulling out some meat for the week. I pulled out some chicken legs and ended up not using them and using them next week. But I also pulled out some ground beef because we're going to be making some tacos. And now I'm starting to make homemade kefir. It's very simple. I bought a kefir, just plain kefir from the store, and I'm just using 2 cups of that kefir, and then I fill the rest of my half-gallon jar up with whole milk, and that is literally it. I just let it sit on the counter and let it ferment. I do cover it with this cheesecloth thing that I have just to make sure debris doesn't get into it. You don't want to fully close it off. You want it to be able to breathe. And you can see in this video, it's a little bit chunky, I guess. But once you mix it all in, it's the exact same flavor and texture as the kefir from the store. And I just let it sit on my counter for, 48 hours. My house is pretty normal temperature. So now I'm showing you kombucha. So you and I made kombucha, or started the kombucha process, in one of my last videos. Not my last pantry challenge video, but my becoming crunchy video. So if you want to see the first half of that process, feel free to go ahead and watch that video, but we will walk through the whole process in this video as well. So you saw me pointing out that there are 2 scobies in there. I only started off with 1 SCOBY, so now that I know it's fully fermented, I can remove both of the scobies, and then I will just discard one of them. If I knew someone who wanted to start making kombucha, I would gift them one of these scobies, and I'd give them 2 cups of the liquid that I'm pouring out right now. So the next step that I'm on is called the second ferment. So this is when I'm taking the first ferment, which was the brewed sweet tea with some sugar, and the kombucha starter, which is also called a SCOBY. I'm now taking that liquid after it's fermented for about a week and measuring about 1.5 cups of the tea, the fermented tea, into a couple jars, and then I will use the rest of that to brew my next batch, which is called my starter liquid. And the reason why you don't want to drink that is honestly simply because it does not taste good. You could drink it that way, but I like to do the second ferment and add some sort of flavoring to it. Right now, I'm just getting started on the step 1 for the first ferment, which is brewing tea, which we talked about in my last video. So that takes about 8 minutes, so I just get that started as I go to finish off the second ferment of this kombucha. I'm sorry if this is confusing. I definitely am doing my best to explain it, but just know that there are a lot of really good resources online that will teach you how to make kombucha. I'm very much a beginner in terms of my kombucha journey. I learned how to do this from a friend. This is probably my 6th or 7th batch in my entire life. I get on a really big kick of making it, and then I get tired of drinking it, and then the cycle repeats itself. So I'm very much still learning how to make this. And I mean, I'm open to any tips or tricks, especially if you're noticing something that I am doing wrong. But from everything I've seen, this is pretty much how most people make kombucha. I just filled up my half-gallon jar of ice, and then I'm straining the tea using the same method as last time. And then I'm adding a half a cup of sugar to my hot brewed tea to make it a sweet tea. And I'll just dissolve the sugar into the tea, just making sure that there's not any chunks or anything left. And then I will add it back to my jar in addition to the SCOBY. Once I am done with the second ferment and then adding all my starter and starter liquid back to the tea, I will just put on some sort of cover. Sometimes it's a washcloth, sometimes it's just paper towel, and then I screw something on just to make sure that the towel doesn't go flying off, and then I set it not in direct sunlight, up away from anything that might get into it, and let it sit. I checked on it this week, and there still isn't a SCOBY formed at the top, so I think it needs another week. So we'll check in on week 4 of the pantry challenge to maybe make some more kombucha together. Now at this point, my broth has been boiling for a really long time, and I'm realizing now that I just do not have enough large pots to make such a large quantity of broth. I made it work. I found every large pot in my house in order to strain all of this broth. But essentially I wanted to strain it through a fine mesh sieve just to make sure that I get all the vegetable scraps, any bone fragments, chicken skin. Literally, the broth has so much stuff in it that I wanted to make sure that it was the best quality broth I could make, because we're actually going to be canning this broth together. I'll be using a solid chunk of the broth to make some soup this week, but I also needed to restock my pantry with some shelf-stable broth. And then I just decided, as I was looking at the broth, it didn't have as much bones and meat stock in it as I would have liked in terms of nutrients, so I decided to add a whole chicken. This chicken was frozen when I added it, so it took a really long time for it to cook, but that's okay. But I wanted that really gelatinous broth. And then I just picked all the meat off the chicken. I really don't enjoy doing this, and I hate the way it feels on my hands, so I do choose to wear gloves while I do it. It's honestly just a personal preference. But I'll just pick all the meat off, and then I actually save the carcass of this chicken just because I didn't boil it that long, and there's definitely still nutrients in it. So I just get to start my next broth bag with this chicken carcass. Once I put the chicken carcass back in the freezer, I start putting my broth into jars. So I just put it into 5 quart jars, and those quart jars end up actually going into the fridge because I just don't have time to pressure can them tonight. Pressure canning broth using the stovetop canner that I have generally takes about 3 hours, so I end up doing it the next night, but I do show you. But now I've moved on to meal prepping my soup. So this is a very simple soup. I just added a jar of mixed vegetables, or I guess a can of mixed vegetables, and then a can of tomatoes, and then all of the chicken that we just picked off the bone. And as you can see, I am dangerously close to the top edge of this pot, and I do end up skimming off a little bit of the broth, but it is a very full soup, and I think I end up getting 7 servings out of that soup, and we do save some of it in the freezer. I don't eat it all that week. And now we are finally breaking in my new cast iron pan. And this is the first meal prep I have done with the cast iron, and I definitely do like it. It's very much a learning curve for me. I know you have to use a lot more fat with it than you would a regular pan, which is honestly totally fine with me. I love using my tallow, but essentially I'm trying to get the Maillard, I'm not sure, not Maillard, those are Maillard bags. I think it's Maillard reaction. Essentially I'm trying to brown it and cook it all the way through and kind of get that caramelization on the bottom of the meat. But I also added my homemade taco seasoning to that, but I forgot to film. But now we're moving on to saving the soup. Like I said, I got way more servings of soup than I had initially anticipated on. And I really did want to can up this jar of soup, but I can only fit 5 quart jars in my canner at one time. So this ends up just going into my fridge, and it's still in there right now. And I assume one day this week I'll end up just eating it. But it is now the next morning, and I wanted to walk you through my morning routine a little bit and just show you how I'm using up other staples in my pantry. So if you remember in my pantry tour, I had a lot of jars of lemon juice that I was trying to go through. So I use it to make lemon water in the morning. And then I also have oranges, and I'm cutting up the oranges because I want to eat the oranges in addition to taking my vitamins. So I take just a couple supplements, and they're supplements for food that I would ordinarily not eat. I definitely don't consume blood, which is the supplement I'm showing you right now. I also don't enjoy taking or eating any sort of organ meats. I didn't grow up eating it, so it's not something that I enjoy the flavor of. And then I also don't eat a lot of fish, so I'm definitely not going to get cod liver oil in my diet any other way. So I just take those. Not medical advice, obviously. And then I also eat 1 Brazil nut. And I just took the recommendation of Andrew Huberman on that one just to support thyroid health. And last night, all I did in order to prep for tacos was make the meat because it was getting really late and I did not have the time or the energy to prep the rest. So now you get to see me prep the rest in the morning, which honestly is not much better. But I just do 1 tablespoon of sour cream, a tablespoon of salsa, 1/3 of an avocado, and I put that in a container. I also had some whole wheat tortillas I was trying to use up. And then I also am just using cabbage instead of regular lettuce to top my tacos with. I did forget to pack olives on this day, but I do pack olives the rest of the week because I do have quite a few cans of olives in the pantry that I'm trying to go through. And then I'm also, like I said in my pantry tour video, attempting to go through protein powders, so I'm just trying to use that up. And then you also saw me pack up my kefir, which I just mixed some of the blueberries and blueberry syrup that was in my pantry with the kefir to give it a little bit of sweetness. And that's what I take to work every day this week. Now we are back home, finally canning up our broth. So this broth is coming directly from the fridge into the canner. And I know you might be scared that I might break a jar, but this canner has a feature for warming the jars. So I just warm them up at a very slow rate in the canner before I put the lid on. Something that I attempted to do this week that I think is ultimately going to be a flop is try to fix my garlic-less pickles. I canned these like a summer and a half ago, summer of 23, I think. And I forgot to put garlic in them, which is so disappointing because I absolutely love pickles. So I tried to put garlic in now, but I really don't think they taste good. I kept trying them, and I've tried them a couple times, and I don't like them, which is so disappointing. But it is what it is. It is a hard lesson to learn when you can something you don't like, but you generally don't make that mistake again. So I'm just heating up my soup here. Sometimes I like to heat it up on the stove. Sometimes I'll put it in the microwave. It just really depends on how I'm feeling that night. But the jars are now fully warmed up, so I'm getting my lid on the pressure canner. I mean, who on earth knows how to put the lid on correctly the first time? I don't think I ever do, even though there's literally a line that tells you how to do that. But I just put it on for 25 minutes. And then once they are nice and bubbly, aka when the pressure canner tells me it is ready to open and they are good to go, I will take them out of the pressure canner and let them sit on the counter overnight. This really did take 3 hours from start to finish, but it was totally worth it. Hello, I am calling it a night. I just took out my jars over here out of the canner. I did burn my hand just a little bit because I feel like as soon as one blister heals on my hand, another one comes right back. It's almost inevitable. Just kidding, it's not inevitable. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have any interesting pantry challenge ideas, feel free to leave them in the comments. And if you enjoyed today's video, I would encourage you to like it if you did like it, and maybe consider subscribing if you want to see more meal prep and other fun videos. So I'm about to head to bed, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.